I want to ask you this question today. What motivates you? So your alarm goes off in the morning, and some of you do what I do, which is you snooze that alarm, right? Some of you, I can tell, are going, we don't use alarms anymore, we're retired. And the rest of us, we're envious, okay? And we're trying not to be envious on the day where we're learning about Jesus, but there's those people who like snooze, right? And your motivation is, I need like just, if I could just get 9 more minutes of rest, everything will be better, right? And then 30 minutes or so go by and then you're good. But there's some of you who hear your alarm and you all get out of bed. Are there people like that in this room? People online, tell me if you're a snoozer or you like jump out of bed immediately. I don't know how you do it, but I am impressed, okay? Obviously you have some incredible motivation getting you out of bed, but really when we talk motivation, there are 2 different kinds of motivation. There's intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation is from you on the inside. You desire to do something. You didn't have any outside forces influencing you necessarily. You do it because you want to. And this is perfectly encapsulated by our son, Zion. We'll ask him all the time, why did you do that? And he says, because I wanted to, because he's almost 4 and that's all that matters. So that's kind of like intrinsic motivation. I want to do this. I desire to do this. I have the dream. I have a passion. I want to get this done. Now, extrinsic motivation is different. It's from the outside. It's really making you do something from the outside in. And that could either be like reward, like I'm going to do this because I get paid, which is probably why a lot of y'all go to work so that we can get paid, right? We volunteer for more probably intrinsic motivation because you don't get like necessarily an external reward from it. But there's also punishment. Punishment can motivate you as well, where you go, I'm going to do this so I don't get in trouble. Like, as Beast Mode used to say, right? I'm just here so I don't get fined, right? Like that's extrinsic motivation. Now tomorrow we're going to celebrate the life of an incredible man, incredible pastor, leader in our nation, Martin Luther King Jr. And if you're part of the email, you're getting those emails. I sent out a little link. I would encourage you, go watch his Christmas Eve message or listen to it. It's powerful. But he was a man of deep personal, internal, intrinsic motivations. And his dream set our nation on a different course. It's a powerful, powerful story that he was so deeply motivated to see an end to the racial injustice that he saw in his day, which, let's be real, was far worse in his day. We have made progress. Thank God we have made progress since his day. There's still a lot of work to be done. It's not solved. It's not over yet, but we have made progress. And a lot of it is because of his incredible motivation to do it. But it's not just his motivation, it was also his methodology. That he made a really clear distinction that he wasn't going to fight this fight with violence or aggression, but he always was going to fight it being in a peaceful kind of way. And the reason I'm sharing that story is because I think that Martin Luther King Jr. learned that from somebody else. And I think he learned that from Jesus. Because this was Jesus' motivation and this was Jesus' methodology. And this is what we're going to unpack today as we go to Matthew chapter 9. Is Jesus' motivation for his work? Why does he do what he does? What is his methodology for doing it? And if you're new or kind of just catching up this year, we are in this journey to read through the entire New Testament in 1 year. I was so excited to see so many people step up and do that. We've been talking about it in staff meetings and journeying through this together. And it's not too late to join. Certainly you could join any time of the year, but it's really measurable, manageable kind of thing, because if we can read the scriptures together, and it'll bond us together like nothing else. And right now we're in Matthew's gospel, and this last week we read this. Matthew chapter 9, verse 35, just a few verses for us today. It says, Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. Now, have you ever been like super lost? Like really, really lost? Not like I need to pull a U-turn from my GPS, but like search and rescue lost. Like, I remember when I was a young adult in our church back in Boise, our church had a trip to go climb Mount Bora, which is the highest peak in Idaho. And it was over a weekend, and so I was one of like the few people that was selected and chosen to given the privilege to lead worship that Sunday and not go on that trip. And so, you know how it is. Some of us, we're here every weekend and we just make it happen. And so, but I remember when we came in that Sunday morning, there was just kind of like this weird vibe. Things were weird. I didn't understand. Like everyone was kind of like on edge. And then I come to find out what had happened was they had climbed the peak yesterday, but 3 people had not returned back to camp overnight. So there are 3 people from our church that were missing on Mount Bora, which is, again, the highest peak. It's in the middle of the wilderness. It's not a place you want to get lost. And at first, it was unclear who these people were. We didn't know. It's just 3 people from this group. And my dad was on the trip, and Rand's brother was on the trip. And so, across the church, there's some kind of compassion arising, right? We are kind of activated to pray. I don't remember anything else about that Sunday. Now, I know you guys all remember everything that I say every single Sunday, but all I remember from that Sunday was this moment. Like, I feel like the whole church service, all we did was pray for these people and hope to hear good news. But search and rescue was activated. They started looking for these people. It was a big deal. And so obviously we came together as a church to pray for these people because we didn't know who it was. It was a big deal. And getting lost in the mountains is not a great thing. There's a concern that these people are dead now. So more news came in that morning that it was actually 3 specific people. We knew who the people were, and one of them was a friend of mine that I'd grown up with in youth group, and his mom was there, and when she heard the news that it was her son that was lost, man, she broke down. She's weeping. She was a wreck. She was still at church, thank God. But she was a wreck. And so, of course, even hearing that it was specific people, then we're more concerned. There's more prayers coming out, right? Again, I don't remember anything else but praying for these people. But luckily, before church ends, we got some good news. We got good news that they had returned back to camp on their own. The search and rescue didn't need to find them. They had returned back from camp on their own. And what had happened was there's this place on Mount Bora called Chicken Out Ridge, and they had chickened out on the way back down and tried to go around it and instead spent the night, a really cold night from what I understand, on the mountainside. They got off the path, they got lost, and there was so much relief and joy in that church. It was the weirdest experience, right? We started the day with like, people are dead, and we ended the day with a party, right? Now, this is the compassion that Jesus feels for the lost. This is what the heart of Jesus is. When he looks out over the crowds, and it says that he had compassion over them, what he's feeling is like that mom whose son could be dead on the side of a mountain. That is the compassion that Jesus feels. Because they were not lost just for one night or a few days or years. They are lost eternally. That's what we understand from the scriptures, is that without Jesus, there is no hope for an eternal salvation, that we need Jesus in our lives. And this is Jesus' motivation to reach the lost and the broken and those people who are on the edge, that those crowds around him are dying and destitute. And if we are honest, we look at our city and we say the same thing is true. Our city is lost. Our community is dying. Our neighborhood is destitute. We have material wealth, sure, but do we have that's our souls connected with our Savior? Do we feel compassion for those people? Because I tell you what, we felt so much compassion for those 3 people that were lost on the side of the mountain, but it took me a long time to feel that level of compassion for somebody who just didn't know Jesus. Now, here's what I want us to understand today. We can only reap a harvest if we take on Jesus' heart. It requires us to have the same heart, the same motivation that Jesus had, that we can reap a harvest. Yes, we can, but we need Jesus' heart in order to do it. That my heart is not big enough. Your heart is not big enough. On your own, you won't want to do it, but Jesus' heart is so big, is so amazing, and that's why we follow him. He's the master. He's the Lord. He's whose mission we are trying to achieve here on this earth, and his harvest is lost souls, and his heart are for those people who are broken and on the fringes. And today, I get it, it is difficult. It is a challenging task. We live in an increasingly post-Christian world. It's increasingly difficult to go to school and be a Christian. It's difficult to go to work and be a Christian. In fact, there's rules written oftentimes in companies to prevent you from doing the thing that we're going to talk about today, which is to speak faith and to teach, to share Jesus. It is difficult. And how we reach people in this kind of society, I think, comes down to how Jesus teaches and Jesus' heart and what he's at. And it's going to require a few shifts from us, if we're honest. So a few shifts from us, 3 things. Now, I'm not a big 3-point sermon guy, but apparently today I am. So 3 things for us today, okay? The first one is this: motivation. We have to shift our motivation. We have to shift the way that we see. So in verse 36, it says, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. So Jesus' motivation is compassion. This is one of those insights that we get, not just in what Jesus did, not just in what Jesus said, but his internal, what was actually going on inside of Jesus, what motivated him to do what he did. And it's compassion. And that's a fun Greek word called splunknitzomoi, okay? Your Greek lesson, look at the person next to you. Try to spell that online. I'd love to see how you spell that online. Splunknitzomai, there you go. But it means moved with compassion. What it literally means is to be moved in your stomach with sympathy. It's that feeling that we felt when we heard our friends could be dead on a mountain. It's that feeling like if you've ever had so much emotion, you actually feel it physically. This is what is described as Jesus is feeling this deep emotion for these people. And he felt this way because they were harassed. They were helpless. This is how he sees them. That means they were neglected. They're being neglected. They're not being cared for. It says they were sheep, like sheep without a shepherd. Then there's all these metaphors throughout the scriptures of God being like the shepherd and the people being like the sheep. And every single time it's a call to the leaders to take care of the sheep. And so what Jesus is really saying is that the leadership of Israel, the spiritual leaders, have neglected these people. They are on their own. Now sheep, I don't know sheep that well. I've never really been a shepherd in person, but sheep are vulnerable, right? They are vulnerable on their own, and they tend to wander when they're on their own. And this is what this is what Jesus sees. These people are wandering. They're on their own. They're fending for themselves. They're vulnerable to attack. They are harassed. They are helpless. And Jesus doesn't just see the problems that they have. He sees their need, and he is moved by compassion. Now, what we have to first understand is this. When Jesus sees you, he sees the exact same thing. He is moved with compassion for you. He loves you. And there's some people here, there's some people online, you could say, I feel like that, harassed. I feel helpless. Certainly, if 2020 did anything to us in 2021, it feels like we're helpless a lot of times, right? We can't do anything to change this. We can't do anything to change the rules. It just seems like we're waiting. It feels like we're helpless. So when Jesus looks at you, he feels the exact same thing. He knows the season of life you've had to walk through. He knows the frustration. He knows the pain. He knows the anxiety. He understands the pressures that you're facing as you try to parent kids and work, as you try to navigate this season, as you try to provide for your family. He understands all of it, and he's not condemning you. He's filled with compassion for you. He's filled with that love and compassion. Now, this is incredible because he also knows all the things that you do that are stupid and wrong, right? He knows all the things that you do that are horrible, that no one else knows about. He knows all those things, and he still feels compassion for you. He still feels that heart of compassion for you, and he's here to care for you because he is the good shepherd. He's the one that your soul longs for, that your soul craves for, and he doesn't condemn. He brings compassion. Now, this is amazing because, again, Jesus knows all the problems. Jesus knows everything, but he doesn't respond with the condemnation that is honestly probably deserved. He responds with compassion that is not deserved. Now, if this is true about you, then it's true about others as well. That's how Jesus sees others. That's how Jesus sees those people who are lost. The question is, how do you feel about those people? What do you feel when you look out over our culture, when you look out over the masses, when you interact with people who don't know Jesus, how do you feel about those people? Do you feel that compassion arising inside of you, or do you feel that temptation to condemn, to put them in their place, to say, well, I can see all the things wrong with you. I can see all the problems that you've got. You've got all this in this, right? Or do we feel compassion? Do we feel how Jesus feels, or are we just taking on our culture into the church? Because our culture right now, I would say, is not a compassionate culture. Anyone disagree? It is not a compassionate culture. It's a culture of cancellation. It's a culture of condemnation, right? It's a culture of if we catch you doing something wrong, we will destroy your life and you'll never be able to recover. That's the culture that we live in right now. It is a condemning culture, and that is what's driving so much of the divisiveness in our world. This is more divisiveness, more anger, more aggression, more violence, and we have a decision to make. Even as we encounter our culture as Christians, we have a decision to make. Do we act like the culture, or do we live counterculture and act like Jesus called us to do? Because I feel it the same way, man. I want to get on social media and blast those people who disagree with me. I want to do it too. I feel the same things. I understand it. But we have a response and a decision to make. Do we respond with condemnation, or do we respond with compassion? What is the choice that we will make? What motivates the things that you say? What motivates the things that you do, your actions? What motivates the things that you post? Because if you're doing any of those things out of a response to anger, response to outrage, you're not posting out of a response to Jesus. You're doing it out of a response to your own self. Now, here's the thing. Harassed and helpless may not be how you would describe like the non-Christians that you know in your life. Like you would not look at them and go, yeah, they seem really harassed and helpless. They're driving a nice car, they live in a nice house, but they're harassed and helpless. But the reality is this. Every single one of us, we believe, and I believe, every single one of us longs to know our Creator. Our soul longs to be connected with the one who created us. Our soul has this desire, and our souls are never at rest fully until we connect with Jesus. And so people are searching. They're searching everywhere to try to fill those needs, but the car isn't nice enough, and the house isn't big enough, and none of those things satisfy, so they just keep searching and searching and searching. And Blaise Pascal said this. He said, there is a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of each man, which cannot be satisfied by any created thing, but only by God the Creator, made known through Jesus Christ. So we all have this God-shaped vacuum inside of us, and we will try to fill it with anything, but nothing fits. And most often we try to fill it with one of three things. The three major idols in our world are money and sex and power. But there's never enough. You always want more money. You always need more sex. You always need more power, a higher position. Right? You always need more of those things. There's never enough because they never fully satisfy, because only Jesus satisfies. Now, if we understand that, then we can understand Jesus' words that these people are like sheep without a shepherd. They're harassed and they're helpless. And it starts to move us towards compassion because they are just trying to fill a void in their lives. They're just trying to fill something that is missing in their lives. And what if we change the way that we saw people? Not as our problem, not as a problem for us to fix or people for us to overcome, but our mission on earth. Our mission on earth is people. People are not the problem. People are the mission. People are the reason why. They are what we are supposed to do and be filled with the same kinds of compassion that Jesus had. So our first shift is that we have to be motivated by compassion. If we are motivated by anything else, we'll never, ever win. And the easiest way to do this is to listen instead of talk. Listen instead of talk. There's tons of times in my life where I've seen somebody and you kind of prejudge them and you go like, wow, what's going on in their world? Why do they talk like that? Like why they have, the F word is I get you can use it to emphasize, but every sentence, I mean, come on, right? You shouldn't use it. Let me be clear. Sorry, that was a little borderline, I know, right? But like then you meet this person, you hear their story, and then all of a sudden you go like, oh, I get it. Oh, okay, your father abused you all your life, and okay, yeah, I mean, like I have compassion. And it's easy to judge anonymous people. It's really difficult to do that with people that you know, and you know their story. And so to be moved by compassion is to know their story. This is what Jesus did. In verse 35, we see that he was with the crowds. He healed the sick. He was with them. He taught them, and he heard their stories, and he was moved by compassion. We have to do the same thing, to be moved by compassion. And the second shift is this. We have to have a shift in perspective. and what we can see. So in verse 37, he says, then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Now, Jesus is beginning a transition here. In the book of Matthew, you start to see a pivot. And in chapter 10, you see it really clearly in the next verse over, 10 verses 1. Jesus has done all the work up until this point. He's done everything. He's healed all the sick. He's done all the teaching. He's done everything. But he's saying this to his disciples because he's setting the stage for something to change, that he's going to empower his disciples to take this message on. He's going to empower his disciples to do this. They were just observing up until this point, and now they're going to start to participate. And again, chapter 10, we'll see he gives them authority and he sends them out to do this exact same work. That means they are the workers that he's talking about. They are the workers who are few. That is the disciples that he is speaking to. And they're going to start to participate in the work too. Now, there's a huge question I'm sure the disciples have, which is like, can we even do it? I mean, Jesus is doing amazing things. He's driving out demons. Like, he's healing sick people, like paralyzed people are walking again. Like, can we even do it? And the answer is kind of yes and no. No, you cannot do it, but yes, you can do it with Jesus' authority, with Jesus' power. This is what he's trying to get them to understand, is really this: the harvest is not the problem. It's actually the workers that are the problem. The harvest is plentiful. It is out there. It's just that there aren't enough workers to go get it. This is a huge perspective shift, because I think often what we really see is that, like, this is an unreachable city. This is a hard city to reach. This is a hard time to do ministry. It's a hard time to be a Christian, which would be a way of us saying the harvest doesn't seem plentiful. But what Jesus said is the harvest is plentiful. And the problem is not with the harvest. The problem is that we just don't have enough workers. There's actually not just a problem, there's potential. Now, how do you feel when you hear these statistics? That the Seattle-Tacoma area is listed as the 7th most unchurched region in the USA. So the least amount of churches kind of in the area. That 50% of all people who live in Seattle-Tacoma area do not and have not gone to church. Now, Bellevue itself, we know this from some statistics, is that 61.3% of people who live in Bellevue claim no religious affiliation at all. So it's not that they're some other religion besides Christians. They're nothing. They are atheist, agnostic, whatever it might be. They don't have any religion whatsoever. Now, when you hear those statistics, is that a problem or is that potential? Now, that's the thing, is that's the perspective shift from us. Yes, it's a problem. We need to reach those people, but there's a huge potential in that. What that means is, look, all the churches in Bellevue, we all have plenty of work to do, right? We won't have to even share the same people or anything. We don't have to try to get people from other churches because there are plenty of lost people for all of us to go around, right? Now the problem is this, and I've heard this. People are predicting 2021 is going to be the year of mass church exodus. Churches are going to close. It's going to be all over. But don't worry. When you hear stuff like that, don't worry. Because for 2,000 years, people have been predicting that the church will close and the church will fail and the Bible will no longer exist. And it hasn't happened yet because the church always prevails because it's Jesus' bride and he always takes care of us. Yeah, so you don't have to worry about those things. And historically, here's the other thing. Historically, if you look at church history, the more that the church is pushed down, the more the church rises up. The more that the church is unstoppable. In fact, in Roman history, they stopped persecuting Christians because it was too much of an evangelistic witness for them. Because the martyrs were winning too many people over to Jesus. So their policy was like, well, let's leave them alone and see what happens. And it actually worked, which is sad too. But I don't believe this because that's not what Jesus said. I don't believe that the church is going to close and fail in 2021 because that's not what Jesus said. Jesus said the harvest is plentiful. There is a problem, but it's not with the harvest, it's with the workers. There's a massive unreached harvest field in front of us. We have got work to do. There's no problem. It is ready and waiting. And do you actually believe that? Do you actually believe there are people who are waiting to receive Jesus into their lives, but they have not had anyone tell them yet? What if we viewed our coworkers, our friends, our families like that? They're just waiting. They want to know Jesus, but they just haven't had anyone tell them yet. They just haven't had anyone give them the opportunity yet. People were ready to give their lives to Christ, and they just need someone to show them the way. The disciples, they believed this. They believed this. And in chapter 10, they go out and they work, and it's amazing, and they do incredible things. And even after Jesus' death and resurrection, they take this message across the world. And then their disciples after that take the message even farther, and their disciples, and so on and so forth, until we get to today, is that people have believed this. And the reason you're sitting here today, the reason you're watching online today, is because somebody did this for you. Somebody answered the call to step into the field, to tell you about Jesus and to win you over to Christ. And now it's our turn. Because this is who Jesus is talking to, is the workers. Now again, it's actually not as hard as we think it is. It's not as difficult as we think it is. Polls would show and statistics would show that most non-Christians are actually willing to talk faith with you if you will not try to force a conclusion on them, which goes back to us listening to them, to hearing their stories. If you listen without judgment and you don't force a conclusion, they actually want to talk faith with you. Isn't that amazing? And honestly, all you have to do is this, like, hey, what do you think? What do you believe? And then fight every urge inside of you to go, like, that's not true. Like, that's not what the Bible says. Just listen. Just listen. It's hard. I know it's hard for me too. But you just listen, because that's kind of compassion. And so there's our second shift, is to see the potential. We have to be moved and motivated by compassion. We have to see that there is potential. And the last thing is this: we have to prioritize prayer. And this is what Jesus says. The final verse is, ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. Now, this means God, that Jesus has authority over the harvest. Not us, not you, not the church. Jesus has authority over the harvest. That means it's his harvest, it's not ours. It's not ours, because he is the one who plants the seed. It's his word that plants the seed that is grown and that is harvested. Now, when the disciples go out in chapter 10, again, it's not under their own authority. They're not trying to win people over to their cause. They're trying to win people over to Jesus, and it's given them by Jesus. The authority is from him, and we're equipped to do it. So the work is, we have work to do, absolutely. There's no question about it, but it is not totally dependent on us. We don't have to do it alone. And prayer is the way that we are commanded to achieve this. When the word ask can be translated pray as well. When we ask the Lord of the harvest, prayer is the way that we are commanded to achieve this purpose. Now, and I shared last week about this vision, this dream, that we're going to reopen and reestablish the prayer room back here behind me, kind of my back left. That we're going to plant seeds of future, of faith into the future here. And I was reminded by Pat Wallace, one of our members, of Charles Spurgeon's story. And Charles Spurgeon was this incredible preacher in London, incredible evangelist. Say 10,000 people would pack into auditoriums to hear him speak without microphones, without amplification. 10,000 people would be there. He won thousands of people over to Christ in London. And so people, of course, they wanted to come and discover the secret of his success. Like what made Spurgeon so successful. And so there's a story that a couple young men came and they said, hey, how do you do this? He said, well, let me show you the boiler room. And so they're like, the boiler room, right? And then this time, steam is what's providing the energy for everything. So the boiler room is like the power source. It's in the basement. It's tucked away. It's not important. Like how many of you, if I'm like, hey, Eric, tell me about the church. And I'm like, let's go look at the HVAC system. That's the equivalent of what he's saying, right? And so he takes them down to the basement. Now in the basement, there are hundreds of people who are praying, who are on their knees, who are interceding. And he said, that is the secret to my success, is that we are praying. They're praying over it. And that is the secret. That's the secret. Ask the Lord of the harvest. There will never be a revival of souls until there is a revival of prayer. It's impossible. There's no revival in history that's ever happened without first moving towards a passion for prayer. There's never a revival that's happened without being empowered and fueled continually by prayer. Now, prayer for revival is good. Prayer that lost people get saved is good, but it's actually incomplete, because that's not what Jesus tells us to pray for here. He tells us to pray for more workers, to pray for more laborers, because the harvest is already there. He's already said it. The harvest is there. The people are ripe. They are ready. What you need is not for those people to get ready. They're ready. What you need are workers to go out and to reap it. That's what we need, because the harvest is already there. And there are two implications in this prayer. And the first is this: you're already one of the workers. You're not allowed to pray this prayer unless you're already one of the workers. Okay, because otherwise what you're doing is volunteering others. Lord, don't send me, but send somebody else, right? Like, that's not the prayer that Jesus is going to answer. Again, the context is Jesus is talking to his disciples who are the workers, and they're supposed to ask for more workers to come and join them. So the first kind of implication or assumption is you're already doing work. You're already working. So if you're not working yet, get working and get praying, right? And then he says this, the second implication is this, that he will actually provide those people, that he will actually provide those workers, that if you ask him, he will send more workers, he will send more people. That's his heart, that Jesus wants to reach him more than you do, that Jesus came and lived and died and rose again so that every single human being on earth can be saved. He wants it more than you want it, and us praying and asking him is us just stepping into obedience and dependence on him to achieve his mission. He's going to do everything to equip us because it's his harvest, it's his authority. So that third shift, right? We have to prioritize prayer. Now that's why I'm excited to announce another thing today that we're going to do. There's something that we can do that encapsulates all three of these shifts. That move towards compassion, that we're motivated by compassion, that real understanding of sorry, my second point. I forgot it already. Come on. To see the potential. Right, we want to see the potential, to be moved by compassion, to see the potential, and as well to pray into it. And there's one thing, there's the most effective way to reach lost people in this post-Christian world, and that thing is the Alpha Course. Now, I know this church has incredible history with the Alpha Course. We've seen lives be changed and transformed and saved through this course. But this course encapsulates those things. It's compassionate. It's not about judging. It's not about really even teaching. When I first did it, I was like, this is not going to work, right? Because you're just supposed to listen to what people say. You're supposed to and somebody told me one time that God was a dog during Alpha. And I was like, that's a really interesting perspective, right? And then come to find out, he didn't really think that. He just wanted to see if I was going to actually judge him or was actually going to listen to him. And that opened up for us to actually have a real conversation. So this Alpha is this place where people can come, they can explore faith, they can ask questions, they can share their point of view, and there's no judgment, there's no follow-up even. Again, it's like all the things that it doesn't seem like it should work. Shouldn't we tell them, this is what you should believe? But instead, what I've found is this: the more that you listen to people, the more they actually open up their hearts to you. And then they are interested in what you have to say. And I've seen it work over and over and over again. Hearing people, listening to them, valuing them like Jesus did, opens their hearts to the gospel in a profound way. You don't need to go preach on street corners. You don't need to figure out the Romans road to salvation. You don't need to memorize a script or do anything. You just need to love and listen to people. That's it. That's what Alpha is all about. And we're going to launch Alpha Online again here February 3rd. We did it back in the fall. We kind of ran an experiment and figured it out. And those of you who are part of it, thank you for helping us figure that out and how it works. But now I think we can take it to another level, because I think there are people who are harassed and who are helpless and they don't have anywhere to go. Where are they going to go right now? We're locked in homes, and there are people who are terrified still by this pandemic and who will not step outside of their house or their apartment. But they can do this because this is online. This is anywhere. I love the commute for Alpha Online. It's open a laptop, and then I commute home by closing the laptop. It's awesome. Right, but if you are here, you've got unanswered questions, you're online, you've got unanswered questions, Alpha is a place for you. If you're here and you've got unquestioned answers, then Alpha is another really good place for you as well. If you don't know why you believe the things that you believe, or you haven't really taken a chance to wrestle through them, this is a place and a space for us to come. So Alpha Online, I would love to see every single person there and join us. It'd be awesome. But we can reap a harvest. We can do it. I believe it. We can reap a harvest if we take on Jesus' heart. We can. 3 shifts: motivated by compassion, seeing the potential, and prioritizing prayer. Now I want to remind you of a dream that I had. And a literal dream that I had. It was the day before I was elected to be the senior pastor here. But I had a dream, and I shared this back in, it would have been June. Remember June? That was a long time ago. But back in June, I had this dream. The night before I came and preached kind of this message and was voted on and had all this anxiety, which is probably why I couldn't sleep. But I had this dream that I was out in this hallway right here, and there were all these people, of all ages, of all races, different people. They were all out in this hallway. They went all the way from the offices all the way back out into the foyer. They were all wearing the same shirt. And for whatever reason, apparently I wasn't paying attention that week, but I just asked, I was like, what are all these people doing here? I didn't know why they were there. What are these people doing? And somebody told me, oh, they're here to be baptized today. And that, for me, was what God went, look, God, you're in this. You want me here. I need to be here. This is God's dream. I don't think it's my dream. I think it's God's dream that we be the church that doesn't contain and take care of Christians. We're a church that reaps a harvest of lost souls. And that we see the day where we see that dream come true. I believe it. It can happen. We can see the day where that foyer is packed and that baptismal is packed. We have to extend service or do it over a bunch of different times because there's just loads of people who are ready to get baptized, who are ready to say yes to Jesus, not because we won them from another church, but because we won them from death into life. We can do it. We can do it. We can do it. But we got to have Jesus' heart, that compassion, that vision. And so today you have a couple kind of responses, couple choices. Again, you could be here and you feel, man, I feel that harassed and helplessness. I feel like this year, this season of life has beaten me down. It's been horrible. It's been the worst year of my life. Jesus knows. Jesus is with you. And in Jesus is the rest that your soul longs for. If you believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and God raised him from the dead, then you will be saved. That's what it takes. Run to Jesus today and drop those burdens on his shoulders. Now, if you're here too, you can say, hey, I really want to see this happen, but I recognize I haven't been working. I haven't been working in it. I haven't been doing it. I haven't been into it. But you could be an answer to prayer today. Your response is to be an answer to the prayers that I've been praying and that other people have been praying. Step into this. Step into the harvest. Start serving. Start giving. Start loving people where you're at. Start listening to them. Turn down the condemning posts. Turn down the news. Listen to Jesus. Become one of his agents in the world. And last is this, keep on praying. I know there are so many of you. You've prayed for years. You've prayed for decades to see the harvest. Don't give up. Ask the Lord of the harvest. He will provide. It will happen. Jesus wants it to happen. Jesus is here to see it happen. Let's commit to pray for more workers so that we can reach a bigger harvest. You agree? Come on. Let's pray today. Jesus, we come to you, the Lord of the harvest, and we ask you for more workers, Lord. We ask you for more laborers, Jesus. We want to be a church that reaches and reaps a harvest, God, of souls. We believe we are here on this property during 2021 for a reason. It is not by accident, Jesus. It is by design. You've designed it for this season, for this purpose. We have a reason, and our reason is to reach the lost. Our reason is to reap a harvest. Jesus, we can't do it on our own. We need your heart, Lord. We need your compassion, God. We need to see with your vision the potential, God. And we need you to intervene. We need the Lord of the harvest to send more laborers. So I pray, Jesus, that we would see the day where that dream that I had was fulfilled, that those people are filled, ready to be baptized. Jesus, I pray this year we would baptize 12 people, and I ask you that, Jesus. And I pray that you would help us to get more mobile, to get more passionate about those people who are on the outside, to reach out, to love our neighbors by stocking a pantry, God, by packing the pantry, to love our neighbors by inviting them to Alpha, to love the people in our city by being moved by compassion for them, Jesus. Change our hearts of condemnation and let us live countercultural with your compassion. In Jesus' name.